part of that involving um, felonies that involve firearms, he decided to rearm himself again. And in December of 2020, as I said, shot somebody he'd known for 15 years in the leg. So he was arrested. And despite the efforts of the DA's office, he was bonded out. So in November of 2022, the federal authorities, this office, charged Mr. Richardson with felon in possession, and he was arrested as a result. And as a result of that, a detention hearing took place in federal magistrate court, and Mr. Richardson was detained. He is currently detained pending the resolution of that felon in possession case in federal court. That case alone took coordinating between all of these agencies to make sure individuals like Mr. Richardson are detained. Now, individuals who are charged with felon in possession in federal court face up to 10 to 15 years in prison. Violent crime is pervasive in Harris County. It poses a constant threat to citizens. One way we communicate to Houston communities is through engagement with our local media, so thank you for being here. We will continue to be diligent through coordinated efforts with our partners, such as the ones here, by convicting and bringing to justice those that commit these crimes in whatever way we can. The bottom line is that we are here. We are here to prosecute criminals and stop the violence. But also, most importantly, we're here to support our community. With that, I'll turn it over to Fred Malinowski, the special agent in charge of the ATF.
Good morning. Thank you. Again, my name is Fred Malinowski. I'm special agent in charge of ATF Houston Field Division. Thank you, U.S. Attorney Hamdani, for that introduction. I'd also like to start off by thanking the partners. You heard a little bit about them already, but Houston Police Department, the FBI, the U.S. Marshals Service, the Harris County District Attorney's Office, and of course, the United States Attorney's Office. None of these things, none of these projects can be successful because unfortunately in Harris County, nobody has all the law enforcement resources that they need. So partnerships are important. In this project, the success of this project was key of those partnerships. So the initiative was 90-day surge run out of the ATF field office involving 13 investigators, an intelligence research specialist, and 3 prosecutors from the Harris County District Attorney's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office. The goal was to federally indict and arrest multi-convicted felons with at least one violent felony conviction who had rearmed themselves and thus posed the greatest risk to the community. Of the 50 defendants indicted, 36 have been arrested and now are in federal custody. 6 of the defendants had rearmed themselves again. So just let me be clear on that. They were convicted of multiple felonies. At least one of those felonies was a violent crime. They were caught in Harris County with a gun and charged by the Harris County DA's office as a felon in possession of a firearm. They received a bond. They went back into our communities, right, and rearmed themselves before they were arrested by federal authorities. Federal magistrate has determined that 35 of the 36 defendants arrested on federal charges will be detained without bond for either being a risk to the community or being a flight risk. 14 defendants are currently fugitives and are being sought by the United States Marshals Service Fugitive Task Force. Now, in September of this year, many of these people standing behind me addressed the media at Jack Yates High School. We talked about a new federal DOJ project to reduce violent crime in Houston. At that time, I communicated to you that the federal government would partner with state and local law enforcement, but the federal government would not be heavy-handed. We were going to use data-driven information to identify violent criminals amongst our community. And that's exactly what this project did. This project identified multi-convicted felons that had a minimum of 1 prior felony conviction that rearmed themselves and were in our community. Let me give you just one example. Justin Hurd, he was a 6-time convicted felon, all right? His convictions for aggravated assault, theft, felon possession, 2 prior felon possession convictions, evading and possession of marijuana. Hur was out on bond when he was arrested in furtherance of this investigation. When he was arrested, he had 3 firearms with him. One of those firearms was stolen. One of those firearms was a short-barreled AR-15 type rifle that links back to a homicide in Houston that's being currently worked by the Houston Homicide Division. I will tell you that these are exactly the types of people that are driving violent crime in our communities. And that is exactly why we address these, and we use that data to identify and indict and arrest these criminals. So thank you, and I will turn it over to Harris County District Attorney Kim Hawk.
Well, thank you, Fred, and the ATF, and thank you, U.S. Attorney Hamdani, for bringing us together today to send a strong message of unity to our community. We all want our community to be safer, and the message that we want our criminal part of the community to know is that if you are a violent criminal who has determined that it is that possessing a weapon, rearming yourself is something that you want to do, we suggest you think twice. We have many of these cases pending in the state system, and many of these offenders do get out on bail. What we'd like the criminal community to know is that now it's just as likely that you will be looked at by our partners in the U.S. Attorney's Office for federal prosecution, as well as or instead of state prosecution. And the purpose is to make our community safer. That was the idea that ATF, that is their mission, that is our mission, that is all of our partners' mission, is to make our community safer. And we know that one of the crime drivers, the cause of violence in our city, are violent offenders who are often violent felons who then possess firearms and use them against innocent people. And so the 50 individuals that were taken as part of this program from the state system to the federal system now face significantly greater time and do not have the same standards in their bail considerations that exist in the state system. You know, the public knows we have a problem, but they want solutions. And I want to thank our law enforcement partners in Harris County for showing that we do work together. We do it on a daily basis. We do it for our community, and we do it to protect everyone. The individuals in my department at the Harris County District Attorney's Office who've worked hard on this deserve recognition. Bureau Chief Ruben Perez and District Court Chief Ryan Volkmer have worked through many cases looking for the worst of the worst who meet the criteria of the federal government and this plan to send into this program. And along with our police chief, even our sheriff, we've had the blessing to share this information with each other, work together to get the worst of the worst off the street. So if you're a felon in possession of a firearm, just understand you're likely to be looking at federal time as well as state time. Don't do it.
Thank you so much. Look, a lot's been said, and I don't want to be up here too long. I just want to say thank you. And to the criminals, and first of all, to our great public, all of our citizens in this region. A lot of times, law enforcement, we don't tell our story, okay? We're telling our story today, and we put out warnings back in September. So just understand that we're serious about it. The partnership. Thank you so much. And I want to say this because it's important. The relationship that we have with law enforcement is second to none. But what's significant today is the relationship of the District Attorney's Office and the U.S. Attorney's Office, Southern District. We're serious about working together and identifying those most violent individuals. So in closing, as my mom used to say, son, sometimes you got to show people better than you can tell them. And that's what we're doing today. So the message to the criminals, most homicides are committed with guns. And my God, we're serious about getting those guns out of the hands of our most violent offenders in this region. And we're serious about it, and just sit back and watch. So message to you, clean it up or we're coming after you. So thank y'all so much. And the men and women on the front line with all of our agencies, thank you so much for the great work that you do out there every day, and loving this partnership. Love it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, DA Ogg. Thank you, SAC Ronowski. I think we've said it enough, but I'll say it one more time. It is the work across all the different agencies that makes this possible. You know, we all have limited resources within the U.S. Attorney's Office, within the DA's office, within the ATF and the FBI. And so getting those resources together, make sure that we can at least keep our community just a little bit safer. With that, I will take any questions. Yes.
Gina Sinceri, ABC News. I think for Fred. Were most of these guns straw purchases, stolen guns? What do you find the provenance of most of these guns to be?
So obviously, if you paid attention to the media last week, right, we did a big media presentation last week on the volume of guns being stolen out of vehicles, particularly in the city of Houston. 4,400 guns last year stolen out of vehicles. So a significant number of these guns are being stolen out of vehicles, right? I wouldn't say a lot of these would come back to straw purchases. We just stood up the Houston Area Crime Gun Intelligence Center, and it's a center that has 12 crime analysts only looking at crime gun intelligence now. That just got stood up in the last couple of weeks. And so we are going to be able to take deeper dives on the 12,000 guns that law enforcement recovered last year and traced, and be able to take deeper dives and give us some more strategic information to all of our partners on where guns are really coming from in the city and the metro area. But this initiative itself, a significant number of those guns, again, are being stolen out of cars. That is the biggest pipeline that we see in the city for how criminals are getting guns.
Can anyone speak to the homicide case linked to Mr. Hurd? Was it higher profile, one we may have covered?
So, listen, because it's an ongoing homicide case with the Houston Police Department, I really don't want to get into identifying too much information on that. So
It's not charged.
it's not charged. Okay, so it's linked. That gun is linked to a homicide that has suspect has not been charged and arrested yet. Okay.
Anything else?
Yes, could you speak a little bit just to the impact of taking these guns out of our community? When we have had these initiatives in the past, what sort of impact has there been? Does it actually make a difference? Because we all know that there are still guns out there, obviously.
Yeah. So, I'll let Brett talk to me in a second about this. But you know, my focus has been taking dangerous felons off of the streets, or at least having them face felon in possession charges in the federal system. Oftentimes, for example, when they're arrested, they have firearms. Sometimes they don't. So, as it relates to guns coming off the streets, well, hopefully it does that. But more importantly, the ones who pull the trigger, those are the ones at the end of the day that we're hopeful we can also get off the streets and face at least federal charges.
One of the great consequences of this partnership is that it addresses the Harris County backlog and the number of violent, dangerous people awaiting trial while on bail out in our community. Unfortunately, a segment of those individuals rearm themselves, and we see it as a driver in terms of the recommission of more felonies by felons out on bond for violent offenses. And so this, in part, was a solution, partial solution, a piece of the answer to getting those individuals off the street. Yes, there's guns everywhere, and we have wide open laws in Texas, but everyone agrees felons should not possess weapons. Our laws agree. The federal laws are stronger than the state laws, but we're willing and ready to use both.
So, as a law enforcement leader, when you're trying to reduce violent crime, and anyone behind me can tell you this the same, we need to look at people, places, and things, right? places you've heard a lot about hotspot policing, right? That's places. This project was focused on people, all right, who are multi-convicted felons with at least one violent felony conviction that have rearmed themselves, and they are a substantially higher risk of either being a shooter or being shot themselves, right? That's just the world they live in. And so if we want to address and try to get out in front of this, part of this project was to try to be proactive and get these people off the street, because we know, again, they're violent felons and they're rearming themselves. So the thing is the gun, right? And we need to stay focused on the thing too. But as you said, it's a legal commodity in the United States. There's a lot out there, but it's a lot like narcotics investigations, right? There's a lot of narcotics out there, but we don't stop trying to take it down and trying to take the sources down. Not everyone that has a gun is a bad person, right? There's a lot of good, honest, law-abiding citizens with guns, and that's why we've had such a push on this vehicles, guns stolen from vehicles, because it doesn't make you a bad person, but you are definitely contributing to the violent crime if you get a gun stolen out of you. So, hope that answers your question.
And there's been a lot of discussion about bond, and I know you guys mentioned a lot of like felons, getting bond to do these crimes. Is there any emphasis on sort of, maybe even stricter bonds, or maybe even just kind of to prevent a lot of criminals from coming back on the street to get guns or steal guns?
Yeah, so I'm going to let DA Ogg talk to that. On the federal side, the way it works is when somebody's arrested, they're entitled to a detention hearing. At the detention hearing, there'll be a decision made upon risk of flight and danger to the community. And oftentimes somebody who's a convicted felon who's evaded arrest is probably going to have a good chance of being detained without bond. In the federal system, there's that. I will let DA Ogg talk about the state system.
Well, with the legislature in session, your question is timely. Our standards are just a little bit different, but they're based on the same principle, a balancing of interests by the judge. The interest being the pretrial freedom and ability of the defendant to remain out in the community while charges are pending versus the public safety interest of the public. So we, the prosecutors, look at risk factors, both with flight and future danger when it comes to a defendant. And the defense counsel generally talks about ties to the community, etc. In the federal system, it's simply a question of detain or not detain, not so much how much the bond will be. So that's really the difference. And we see in the federal system that when it's a question of public safety versus the individual's rights, at least with the cases we've picked, it tells me that ATF has correctly selected the cases. The U.S. Attorney's Office has correctly selected the cases we've submitted, because 35 of the 36 referenced who've been arrested have been detained in the federal system, where they were not in detention in the state system.
Any more questions? Thank you, everybody. And again, I want to thank our partners here, the hard work of the DA's office, ATF, Chief Finna, always vigilant, FBI, and the Marshal Service. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
I didn't want to step before.
That's okay. Thank you. Sorry, I think
Really? We are. And so I'm like, who?
That's planned.
You want to do the gun safes? What's the time?
Obviously, this happened down the road.